UFO sightings in America were right here in the San Francisco Bay Area, believe it or not, in 1896. Hundreds of people in the Bay Area reported seeing a mysterious cigar-shaped flying machine moving steadily eastward. Then it was seen in Sacramento, then all across the country, finally getting as far east as Pennsylvania. In the end, thousands of people saw this weird airship that looked almost exactly like a Zeppelin, except that it was 20 years before Zeppelins were invented and over 30 years before the first Zeppelin flew over the United States. The UFO phenomenon is strange no matter how you look at it, but the media has sensationalized it to the point where you don't want to believe anything. They either publish stories that no one could possibly take seriously, or they make fun of the witnesses. They make it seem like anyone who reports a UFO is crazy, and that just isn't the case. People have been seeing these things for almost a century. Thousands of people, all kinds of people, perfectly respectable people see them every year, and they can't all be crazy. So now it seems like no one can describe what they saw without someone else interrupting to explain what it really was. Even reading about UFOs, almost everything I've come across is some writer's interpretation of some investigator's report. Every sighting gets filtered through 2 or 3 people who weren't there and didn't see anything. You hardly ever get to hear an actual first-hand eyewitness account. So that's the point of this movie, to let those who've seen something unusual speak for themselves, with no experts, no comments, no explanations.
My name is Ted Roe. I'm a stockbroker in San Francisco.
My name is Tor Fredrickson, and as far as what I do, I guess you could say I'm just a student of all kinds of metaphysical, religious, fringe philosophies.
My name is John Rock, and I'm an offset press operator and a graphic artist.
I am Dr. Howell of the Church of the Subgenius, Master of Church Secrets.
Okay. My name is Andrew Hammond, and I'm a painter.
My name is Hyatt Ted Burke. Currently, I'm a walking messenger downtown. I also write poetry and songs. I'm working with a group called Mother Tongue, and I'm an actor and student of the universe.
My name is Rod Biglamini. I'm a native San Franciscan, and I work at the San Francisco Marriott.
My name is Steve. I'm a retired truck driver.
My name's Brenda, and I'm an accounts receivable clerk at a publishing company.
I don't want to be identified because a lot of people do know me, and some people tend to ridicule people who come forward that have been witnesses to certain things.
We were on a road trip in Montana near Lincoln in the mountains, heading west towards Idaho. My grandparents, my Aunt Brenda, my brother, and myself. And as we were driving along, my grandfather exclaimed that he saw something kind of interesting. And I looked up and saw a large silver disc-shaped object about 30 feet across and maybe 15 feet thick. It was very bright, reflected the sky off of its finish. But the whole time it was descending, and it landed within, I would say, a quarter mile of our car. My grandfather was very excited and pulled over to the side of the road. And as a child, I really didn't know what I was seeing, so I was waiting for somebody to tell me what was going on and what I was looking at. So I was interested, but I wasn't, intrigued like I would have been at age 15 or something. My grandmother was very scared of it and strongly suggested to my grandfather that we leave. And I remember those sensations of their emotions almost as strongly as I do the object itself.
My first sighting was back in the early 70s. I was going to Bayside Middle School in San Mateo, California. I was in a PE class early in the morning with about 6 other students and PE coach. We were doing our calisthenics. And we were outside. We looked up. All of us, for some reason, looked in the same direction we saw what appeared to be a ball. It looked like a ball, kind of cylindrical, chrome, and it was reflecting light off it. It was spinning. You could see it spinning. It didn't make any sound. And so we kind of all sat there and we didn't really say much. We were just all kind of there in awe looking at it. And then after this thing hovered in that position for about 10 seconds, all of a sudden it looked like the sky opened up. It was really a strange thing. I've never seen anything like it before, but it actually looked like the sky opened up and it just slid right into the sky and it was gone that quick. And our PE coach at the time, he told us not to tell anybody for some reason. I think he was frightened. He seemed like he didn't know what to think of it either.
Okay, I saw this mysterious cloud rising behind the mountains, and it started advancing in a very strange way. So I knew it was a UFO. I called out so others could see it, neighbors, and this UFO began to change its shape. It became definitely round, looked like a donut. There was something in the center now. It was black, it wasn't very shiny, and around the center, we've got something that looks like smoke or gas. Hundreds of people saw this too at that hour, and it was something like 5 times the size of a full moon. I ended up looking at this UFO directly above my head, and I know that was the position of it because I was looking straight up. Now, what I saw was it disappear. It wasn't like a donut anymore. It was just like a round cloud, and it got bigger and whiter until I could barely see it anymore. This happened in Chile, and it was also seen in the northern part of Chile, and it went all the way to Argentina. No official explanation was given for this UFO.
I was in bed late at night in Marysville, California, where I was born, and I saw a bright glowing orange object come over my window by my bed. It comes by just straight over the window, rather slowly, and then I leapt out of bed and screamed about this to my mother, and she said I was dreaming and go back to bed.
In 1985, November, I was down in Big Sur, California. I was at the Esalen Institute, which is an institute for higher consciousness. There were 5 other people besides myself who saw it. This object appeared in the east and headed towards the west. It took about an hour and a half to cross the sky. It was moving relatively slowly. It was sort of a pale yellow color, about the size of the head of a cigarette held at arm's length. It seemed to dribble little bits of its own light or fire or whatever it was. Little bits of its own light were dropping down from it. I probably took it better than the other 5 people. The other 5 people started jumping up and down and waving their arms and trying to signal to the thing and saying things like, "Hey, here we are, come and pick us up." I thought that was great. When we mentioned it to the management of the hot springs, they didn't act too surprised and said these things do happen, and they don't really pay much attention to it themselves unless they either come real close or they hang in the vicinity for a real long time.
Okay, this was about 1973. It was in the north of England, and I was living at home then. I was probably about 15 years old, and me and my mother and my brothers were all kind of hanging out in the garden that day, and my oldest brother decided that he had to go up into the mountains behind the house to do take some photographs of this bird's nest. He went up to the mountain, which he'd done lots of times, and he was probably up there for about an hour. And meanwhile, my mother and my other brother and I were down in the garden. We were hanging out the washing, the laundry. And my mother noticed that she started shouting, and she started shouting for my brother to come on down, and I looked up, and he was on the side of this mountain, on this ledge, and he was going crazy. He kept jumping up and down and waving his hands in the air, right? And my mother kept thinking he was going to fall off. And my mother was begging my other brother to come on down from the mountain. And finally, she succeeded in getting his attention, and like 20 minutes later, he was back in the house. And he came through the door, and he was in shock. And one of the first things he said to us was, well, you're not going to believe what I saw, so I'm not going to tell you what I saw, right? So anyway, we said to him, go on, what did you see? And he said, okay, you won't laugh. We said, no, we won't. And he said, well, I saw a UFO. And we laughed. And finally, he said he'd taken pictures. Anyway, my mother, she asked my brother to, will he please unload the camera, put them in the envelope, and she was going to go down to the mailbox with him and wait for the mailman to pick it up, just to make sure my brother didn't fool with the negatives, right? And we waited, the mailman came, and off it went. Meanwhile, we went back in the house, and my brother and I, the one that's seen this UFO, rang up the Royal Air Force. I think they said they already had somebody out there, or they would get somebody out there. And like within 5 minutes, we saw the planes going over the mountains near the house. And like for the rest of the week, we were hearing stories from the neighbors, and about that there've been lights and stuff seen in the sky. About 10 days later, the mailman came back with the developed slides, and I was amazed because I really didn't believe in UFOs until I saw these slides. And on about 6 of them, there was just pictures of clouds, but behind each cloud, it looked like a black blob coming from behind the cloud. Okay. And on the number 7 frame, right in the middle of the sky, and there was no clouds then, was this oval-shaped flying saucer. And it was real typical looking, just like other pictures I've seen. It had a dome on the top, it had windows going around the dome. You could see underneath, it had 3 kind of landing pads underneath. We were amazed that he'd taken these pictures.
The second sighting was really a lot less dramatic. My brother and I were playing Frisbee out on the lawn, and we saw that it was total daylight. We saw this object go across the sky. It left a vapor trail, and it looked like the surface of it, there was some sort of activity like flames or vapor emitting from it or something. It could have been a meteorite. It looked like one, but it was just traveling a little bit too slow to be one.
It was a very clear night. There wasn't a cloud in the sky. It was very clear. The moon wasn't out either. I first noticed a light up in the sky, and I thought, first of all, it was a meteorite. I looked away, and I looked back up at the light again, because I thought I might have not focused correctly. And what I saw were a craft coming out of another craft. The craft appeared to be like airplanes. They were not saucers. There were 2 sets of them. I couldn't tell if they were different sizes because one set got in formation due east, and they sat there. The other set were headed due south, but their images were smaller. The larger craft got in position, and then all of a sudden, the door shut. It took about 10 to 15 seconds for the door to shut. And then all of a sudden, when the door was completely shut, there was no more light coming from the craft. But there was a certain amount of background light in the atmosphere, and you could see it reflecting off the surface of the craft. The craft slowly turned. Then what came in view was the observation platform. I went inside, and I listened on the radio on an FM station, one of the FM stations, and they came across with a bulletin that thousands of people had called the San Luis Obispo County Sheriff's Department and reported seeing UFOs.
So I'm sitting in this place in Hayward, storage facility where I worked. No one was around. I spotted it. I picked up a camera that miraculously was sitting on the desk next to me that the company owned, and I took a picture of it, and a second after I took the picture, it rose up out of frame, out of sight, and I sat there shocked for half a minute, thinking, that I've got this photograph in my hand, and I was waiting for it to develop, and it didn't even occur to me immediately to run outside and continue photographing.
It was about 11 at night, and I was driving back to town, and it was really dark, and there was no other traffic around. And then I saw this like bright light in the sky, but it was sort of like lightning, except it moved. Like I saw it move across the sky. And the road veers right at a certain point, and you go around this hill. And when I came around the hill, a couple hundred yards or so off the side of the road, there was this thing, this upside down bowl, sort of, and it was white and like luminous, glowing, like almost as if you could see through it, and the light was coming from the inside. So anyway, I stopped the car, and I got out, but I didn't go too far. I mean, I stayed by the car, and I looked out there, and it looked like it was hovering, or it was on some kind of stand that I couldn't see, because you could see the grass lit up underneath it. And in the light, between the bottom of the thing and the ground, I saw forms, like figures, like, I don't know, they looked like they were like 10-year-old kids, that tall, anyway. But I couldn't see much. And they were just moving around. I couldn't tell what they were doing. And so I was standing there, and I don't know, maybe 5 or 10 minutes, or maybe 15 minutes, and trying to see what was going on. And then I felt like there was somebody close to me, and I turned, and he was a couple inches shorter than I am, and he was really skinny, and he was wearing like a uniform, but it wasn't like not like an army uniform, but like a jumpsuit or something. But it was really dark, and I couldn't see much, and I couldn't see his face, but maybe it was like kind of a bland face, but it was like he had big eyes, maybe big dark eyes, but it's hard to tell. It was kind of shadowy, and I mean, it freaked me out, you know. He said something like, "You're not supposed to be seeing this," and I don't know, I said something dumb, like, "I'm sorry," or something, and then he said, "Wait until 1999, and then everybody will know about us." And I can't remember if I said anything. The next thing I remember happening is like he shone a flashlight in my eyes, or there was like some bright light from his direction, and then I don't remember him leaving or anything, but I have this sort of vague memory of seeing this saucer thing take off, you know, but it's like a dream. It's like I can't remember what really happened and what I made up later, because the next thing I knew, I was driving again, and it was all starting to come back, the whole memory of the experience. But it was weird, because it's like I had nothing to prove it, or, you know, I wasn't sure, because it got so strange near the end.
We've just heard from Wellington radar that we've got an object about a mile behind us and it's following us. Let's hope they're friendly. It's really getting a bit frightening up here. There's a whole formation of unidentified flying objects behind us.
The most tedious and annoying part of being a member of the Church of the Subgenius is having to try to explain in just a few words or so what the Church of the Subgenius is, because what it is comprises so many disparate elements and so much that is unfamiliar or perhaps even shocking. It's difficult in only a few sentences to give some idea of this. But basically, we of the Church of the Subgenius believe with our co-believers scattered across the world that J.R. Bob Dobbs, the saint of sails, the living avatar of slack, is our only hope, the bulwark against the aliens who are due to land upon our planet on X Day. These aliens intend to make this world of ours something like a Stuckey's in space.
The first incident was in the summer of 1966. I was at a Bean in Golden Gate Park, and the filmmaker Kenneth Angar got together a group of us. It was 13 people, as a matter of fact, brought us back to his house, which is the old Russian embassy in San Francisco, and he said, I have something very curious and wonderful I want to show you. And we walked up to the roof, and we got to the roof of this room, and we looked up in the sky, and even without the telescope we could see a large, all I can say is it was a large spaceship, shaped cylindrical spaceship with a bluish-white light about it, and he told us that this was under the control of the Order of the Golden Dawn, the Aleister Crowley group, and he maneuvered his arms, he moved his arms up and down, and the ship moved in that manner. We watched it for about 15 minutes. We all saw it. It was not something that we were imagining, because every one of us there saw the ship. And then he said, I'd like to be alone with this ship. And we went downstairs, and then later we made a number of telephone calls to newspapers and Air Force bases, and no one else had seen it. So it was what I would call a special phenomenon. We were the only ones that saw it, and for whatever reasons, he brought us here to see it. He never really explained, but I felt like privileged to be in on that.
So I investigated and found there was a UFO club meeting at the University of California, Berkeley. And so I decided to just go to the meeting, and James Harder was there. He was the faculty sponsor. And I'd already heard of him. He'd done a lot of hypnosis work for J. Allen Hynek, this sort of. He was, at the time, I guess, say a minor cheese as far as the regression thing went. And he asked everyone in the group how we became interested in UFOs. And when he came to me, he goes, what's the earliest experience you had? And I said something, oh, when I was 10, I thought I was from outer space. And he goes, anything before that? And I go, yeah, my mom told me that my very first dream was that I met little green people in the hallway. And when Harder heard that, he goes, well, that's it. That's probably the memory of an abduction experience. And your whole interest in the field of UFOs is just an attempt to make sense out of something that happened to you when you were very young. He wanted to hypnotize me. That's just not my way. That was the first I'd ever considered any type of abduction. But then when I didn't want to be hypnotized, he handed me a pendulum. And after we established the basic yes-no response with the pendulum, he started asking me questions, and he goes, is it possible you had a horrifying experience aboard a UFO? And that thought horrified me. It wasn't, I mean, if I would have communicated that to him, that would have proved his point. But to me, it was just like, I'm just kind of relaxed, trying to stay still so the pendulum thing will work, you know, without my conscious mind. Then he just threw this fear at me. I don't think I would ever really want to be hypnotized. I think too much information passes between the hypnotist and the subject.
I was in my room, and it was just turning dark. It was just dusk. And I heard this strange buzzing sound. Sounded like bees or electricity or strange, hard to describe sounds, but loud. And so I thought that maybe it was, since we lived in a farm-zoned area, we had our own well. And I thought it might be the electric pump for the well malfunctioning. So I went outside to check the well, and I started around to the side of the house where the well was, but before I got there, I realized that that sound was now just coming from everywhere. Seemed to be coming from every direction. And then I looked up in the sky and I noticed a green disk about the size of the full moon. It was a green disk of light circling inside of a cloud. It was a low, flat cloud. And so I couldn't see what the origin of the light was. I could just see the circle of light circling in there. And I felt, for some reason, a compulsion to go into a little clearing, a little thicket of woods that was across from our property. And I really didn't want to do that, but this compulsion was quite strong. And when I got to the entryway to the thicket of trees, I heard my name said from about 8 or 9 feet up in the air, and about 3 feet in front of me, really close. And the voice sounded just completely inhuman. It was deep. I don't know how to describe it. It was extremely deep, and it didn't sound like anything even someone joking could do. And at that point, I decided that I wasn't going to go into the thicket, and so I turned around to go back into the house, and my memory fragments. What I remember is turning around to walk back to the house, and then it seems like I'm just in darkness. I don't know how else to describe it. It seemed like I was in just complete darkness. And I was looking for the ground. I thought if I could find the ground, I'd know where I was and be able to keep walking. Also, walking didn't seem to be working somehow. I seemed to be flailing my limbs around. And then I remember seeing the ground from about 20 feet up in the air and looking up and seeing the same black, shiny obsidian thing hovering up there. Then the next thing I remember, I fell over the coral formation that was in the front of our property. This was about 4 or 5 feet tall, and it was in the middle of a lot of thick Florida jungle stuff like sea grapes, hard to get into. I couldn't have really stumbled into it very easily. I would have had to have dug my way through the bushes. And my impression was that I fell on top of it, and it was 4 feet tall. So that I hurt my knee when that happened, and right there my consciousness seems to become sort of more normal. And I felt really tired, and I felt really dejected for some reason. I just felt completely spent. And I walked back into the house and walked into my room and got in bed and went to sleep. So the next morning when I woke up, I noticed that my pillow was soaked with blood. And so I went into the bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror and found my hair was standing on end, and it was from dried blood. I couldn't figure out what it was. At first my face was brown and my hair was standing straight up. And when I realized it was blood, I stuck my head in the shower and washed myself off. And then I figured out that it had been just an extremely strong nosebleed. And that day, all that day, I kept thinking about a funny kind of memory of someone telling me that something had been put into me that made me special, that made me different, and that it was a helpful thing for me to have gone through that pain.
My friend and I were sitting at Hanakapiai Beach on Kauai. We had a green velvet cloth spread out, and we looked up, and this ship appeared. It was, and I received the information. This was a Venusian scout ship, piloted by a being whose name was Orthon, also part of this intergalactic council or federation, part of the beings of light. And a blue light, which was like the blue light that had come from the ship in Mexico, appeared. It was like a wide swath of light. We felt this warm, wonderful, glowing feeling. It made us feel absolutely magnificent. It felt like it was healing us of all of our ills, psychic and physical. And we were told that if we were to give mushrooms to anyone on the beach who wanted them, we weren't to force on people, they would also see this light. And we gave them to 6 or 7 people, as it turned out, who wanted them, and they saw the light. They had the same feeling and experience. And I never saw these people again. We left the beach and that was it. But I felt like that was a special experience, and that it was that ship appeared in order to spread the information to other people. The people on the beach who did not have the mushrooms did not experience what I and my friend experienced. They did not see the blue light. They did not have any of the perceptions of, or the messages that we did, and they did not feel this warm, glowing feeling. It was told that only those who had eaten the mushrooms would experience this and feel this.
The X day, the time the X's land, is something which we feel everyone should know, and so in the interest of general public safety, it's July 4th, 1998. And if Dobbs and his legions are not present to greet them, the catastrophe that will befall the human race is nothing compared to the catastrophe that will befall after that one befalls, if you follow me. But aliens may be a misnomer. These creatures have been here all the time. In a sense, we are aliens, since our development has come later than theirs. They are the original landlords of this planet, which is why they are able to foreclose. And on X Day, July 4th, 1998, they may indeed attempt to take it back, unless the stars are right in their courses. These aliens have been known throughout the history of mankind as different things: angels, demons, fiery wheels, sea serpents, Sasquatches, gooks, geeks, and troublemakers. But they all answer to the same big firm. And it's our impression that if they do foreclose on our planet, life will be even less fun than it is now under the conspiracy, who don't know what they're doing.
I arrived in Mexico in late 1967 after I had been with a band called Citizens for Interplanetary Activities, and I met a number of people who I felt I had been with for many, many lifetimes. One time we were by a stream and I looked up and there was a large ship, which I perceived in my brain as being a mothership, which also had that form. It was like this elliptical form, and there was a bluish white light about it, and a beam of blue light came down from the center of the ship into my third eye center and my pineal gland, and the blue light came down into my third eye center, and this is a message that was transmitted. It said, "You are a mutant vegetative spore transplant from the planet Venus who has been implanted into an Earth host in order to transmit automatically to our planet, which is a healing and philosophical planet information from Earth that'll help restore the balance and harmony on Earth, and you'll be further contacted by us over the years." At that moment, my friends came out, and they were quite astonished. They came from behind the rock, and they saw the ship. We all watched it for about 5 minutes. Then we looked across the stream, and this little being appeared who was about 3 feet tall, kind of a typical elfin kind of creature. Why he was presented to us in that form, we don't really know. But I perceived or intuited that he was from the ship, and he was part of the Beings of Light network. And he was speaking in like a high-pitched electronic whir, and I felt that implanted in my DNA, RNA were billions or millions of message units that were later encoded in the form of automatic messages and poetry and songs over the years that I've been remembering in my waking moments, in consciousness and in dreams and in poetry and whatever.
As for what the aliens look like, this is a matter of public record and common knowledge. Small, sprightly elves or dwarfs who cavort in moonlight glades and... All right. Sometimes, according to some superstitions, large, shaggy, smelly giants covered with offensive hair. At other times, small, pulpy hominids who squeak and gibber distractedly before injecting their helpless victims with large phallic syringes.
I had an experience. I was walking downtown in Auburn, California, with a friend of mine at about 1 o'clock in the morning, and we found a baby possum all by itself. We put it in a box and took it with us. And later some police cars pulled up to us and wanted to know what was in the box. So they opened the box and they're shining their flashlights, 3 flashlights into this box. And this tiny little terrified creature is, huddled in the corner. And then they let us go. But then, about a week later, the missing time event occurred. I was walking home from school, again on the same stretch of road, the same area by the post office, 3:30 in the afternoon, and then the next thing I notice, it's dark. And at first I was thinking, it didn't hit me that 6 hours had passed. It was just, I was feeling like, well, it's dark, I've been fooling around too long, I gotta go home. And then I get up and I start walking home, and I'm realizing that I have no memory of what was going on while it was getting dark. And so I was very disorientated, and I start walking home, and I see this bank had a clock display on it, and it was 9:30, 6 hours later. So then I really get scared, and I go home, and I notice there's a cop car in my driveway, and the front door is open, and there are policemen inside, and they're talking to my mother. And I come in, and all eyes are on me, and the cop comes over and puts his hands on my shoulders and sits me down, and he says, "Where have you been?" And I started crying, and I said, "I don't know." Then after the missing time event, about a week after, I started having extreme nightmares. And the nightmares, ironically, were that I was the possum in the box. And I felt a strong sense of confinement with the four walls, and the roof opens up, and these huge lights come in, and I can sense that there's someone behind the lights. I can't see them, I just see these blinding lights in my face, and I'm feeling the same terror that I witnessed in the possum, in my nightmare. And this nightmare occurs for months. I had a dream where I was told that my name was Loretto, and it didn't really make a lot of sense to me. I'd been through the town. It's about 2/3 of the way down the Baja Peninsula, and I really didn't think too much of it, but I decided to follow the dream and go check it out. And I was there about 7 weeks, and in that 7 weeks I had about 7 experiences with what I would call others. Whether they were aliens or not, I really don't know. The first one took place it was more of a dream. I dreamed that I was lying on my back along with a lot of other people, and we were being examined. We were being examined so closely it was frightening. It was like our insides, who we were, was up for review. And a man next to me just started screaming. He just starts going, "They shouldn't be allowed to do this. It's not right, it's not right." And when I awakened, there was a little brown person holding me down with one hand on each shoulder. And even though, like I say, this being was only about 3 feet tall, I could struggle and move a little bit, but I couldn't throw him off. The last few experiences, I just let go. I go, okay, that's it, I'm not going to struggle anymore. And the last time this happened, when I finally just go, okay, that's it, I give up, what do you want? The being lowered my hands down to my side, and then about 3 more little people came in with a human being. The human had hair down to the shoulders. I couldn't see the color or anything. And the human reached over and grabbed the sheet that I was sleeping under and shook it a couple times as if to say, okay, now let's just screw around with this guy. Let's see what kind of reaction we can get from him. It was like they were studying my emotions, because there were times when I would go from fear to a feeling of friendship so quickly, I don't think it was my detachment. It was like they were just running different types of energies through me to see how I would react or something. And this time when the human came and shook the sheet a couple of times, I just screamed my way out of it. And it wasn't fear, it was more like I felt like I was betrayed, by a bunch of friends. It's like, hey, if you want to come in and examine me, that's fine. There's no reason to keep scaring me like this.
There are 2 different types of fear for the sake of this discussion. One is this type of fear you feel when you hear, there's a rabid bobcat in the next room, and it might come into this room. That's one type of fear. But the fear associated with aliens is the sort of fear as there is a ghost in the next room, or a god.
My parents had gone away for the evening. They were going to be back really late. So I fixed myself some dinner and sat down to watch a television show. And 15 minutes into the show, that was at 8:15, the TV went to snow. So I got up to check it, and I switched the channels around and found nothing but snow and test patterns on an old movie. So I thought that maybe the lightning or something had knocked out the TV station, so I went in to call a friend who I knew was watching the show too. And halfway through dialing his number, I looked up at the kitchen clock and noticed it said 1:45, which I couldn't believe. And so I called telephone time to see if it was true, and it was. And I was really confused. I was standing in the kitchen, and as I stood there, I looked over and noticed that the kitchen door, which had been locked, was standing dark outside because the street light had gone off. And then my memory becomes fragmented right there. I was afraid to go over and close the door. And the next thing I remember, I'm standing by the door, holding the doorknob, and I was thinking someone was on the other side twisting the doorknob, trying to open it. And I was thinking if I could hold it really tightly, they would think it was locked and go away. And then the next thing in my memory, the door is standing open. And there's someone outside the door, and in my memory I can't see them. I could see them at the time, but I've blocked it out. This person wants me to go out with them, to walk out in a certain direction, out on our property. And I didn't want to. I really didn't want to. I didn't want to be in physical proximity to these people. And I think I was arguing, making some kind of a deal that I would go with this man as long as I didn't have to have those others near me. And so, despite everything I wanted to do, which was not to go out, I walked out with him. I knew it was inevitable that I would, and I did. I remember feeling the wet, cold grass beneath my feet. And I looked back around and saw all these, the others that were with this man kind of falling into files behind us. And at that point I knew that he wasn't going to keep his promise and that they were actually going to come close to me. And what I remember of these people is tight-fitting black clothes. Maybe not uniforms, but tight-fitting black clothes, but I can't see their heads or their faces. And then we're standing underneath something that's hovering above me that looks like obsidian. It's like shiny, really super shiny black something. And it's sort of floating not too far above us, maybe 6 or 8 feet. And these others are falling around me and kind of gathering quite close to me. And I was just revolted and horrified, but there was nothing I could do about it. And that's all I can remember of it, of that part. Next thing I remember, I'm sitting in a chair right in front of the television. It was a different chair than the one I had been sitting in. And my father was standing next to me, and he looked down at me, and as I sort of came to, he said, what the hell's going on? The kitchen door standing wide open, and anyone could have walked in and robbed the house, and what's wrong with you? Why are you sitting in front of the TV staring at snow, watching snow? And sort of as I came into normal consciousness again, that's what I was doing, sitting in front of the television looking at snow. And I turned around and there was my mother, and that's the way they'd come home and found me, and it was now 4:30 in the morning.
I think the motivation behind UFO hunting and the passion for UFOs is the same as that behind, the hunt for the Yeti or mysticism or paganism or modern witchcraft. It's a search for an alternative science, an alternative religion, something new, unchanged, untouched. Some kind of new frontier that isn't controlled by or taken over already by your boss, your preachers, the government, the laws. New space, a place all of our own.
Well, after we had the experience, we were told to make this letter board, which is like a Ouija board. And the very first message that was spelled out to us, which we feel came from this source, said, "Go without fear to your brothers and sisters throughout your world, for you are no longer bound by the laws of man. Rather, you have chosen the one law of universal love, and as you carry its message to your brothers and sisters, you will come to no harm, but will come to know the joy of fearlessness. We are with you in all ways and at all times, and shall supply your every earthly need. We are more numberless than man's mind can now conceive of. Infinite love to you, your friends of peace, the beings of light."
It's quite a thing to confront that I could be part of the food chain. It's so much so that at one time my rock group was called Audacious Charisma, and now we're Alien Livestock. I mean, I took a major whack. The human ego has sort of been, de-elevated. I mean, from the center of the universe to possibly we're nothing more than a science project of a bunch of Orion teenagers is something that a lot of people aren't ready for. But I think if we do accept it, it will humble us a lot and perhaps bring us more in tune with the Earth.
The things I saw were obviously some sort of product of a high-tech technology. I don't consider them to be natural phenomena at all. I know the difference between a shooting star and what I saw.
Oh, I think I saw something from another planet. I mean, sure, I think they exist.
In my opinion, there's a lot of different ways to move around if you're going to move around. I feel that the craft was piloted by an intelligence. It was there because we were there. It came and landed nearby because there was some interaction between us and it. I'm not sure why, and I'm not sure that it was necessarily extraterrestrial. I personally don't feel that it was from Earth because airplanes, stealth fighters back to biplanes are shaped pretty much the same. They're designed to work on basically the same principles, just different speeds and different propulsions. But this thing looked like it belonged in the air, but it wasn't an aircraft, it was something else.
I am somewhat of a UFO buff, and I have been interested in UFOs ever since I was a little kid, but it was always a little doubt in my mind that they actually did exist. I really did have a doubt in my mind until I actually observed this in '77. Well, I believe that you could call them UFOs, but I believe that there has been extraterrestrials that have landed here or crash landed here, and that the Air Force has copied the technology.
I realized that what I saw, even though it doesn't have an official explanation, it's not the kind of UFO people like to see or would dream about seeing. They usually see a flying saucer or a cigar-like thing. This, I know it was smoke, or it looked like gas. It didn't look like the typical UFO, but I believe that it could have been something from another planet.
Well, I was walking my watchman's rounds one night. When up in the sky I saw this gleaming light. It looked like a soup flying upside down, and 100 people must have seen it cross our town. Out of all the folks questioned by the local buzz, not one of them would call it what they knew it was. They said it was swamp gas. Swamp gas. Swamp gas. Swamp gas. Swamp gas, oh yes, but I know what I see. Well, I saw the thing settling in an open yard. It was glowing kind of shiny and sneaking hard. I looked it over closely so I wouldn't forget, and I'm sure that it was nothing that this world's made yet. I woke up all the neighbors, made them look and see, and as soon as they could talk again, they said to me, you know that's just swamp gas. Swamp gas. Swamp gas. Swamp gas. Swamp gas, oh yes, but I know what I see. So I called up the cops and I tried to explain, and while they called the Air Force, they called me insane. I hauled in 50 people who had seen it too, so they shut up fast and let the experts through. But the answer from the experts raised a lot of smiles, 'cause there's no swamp nearer than 300 miles. But they said it was swamp gas. Swamp gas, scientifically proven. Swamp gas. Swamp gas. Swamp gas, oh yes, but I know what I see. Now, why do they try to tell you that tale and insist that you believe it or you go to jail? Or worse, they'll send you packing to the funny farm. Oh, government lying does a lot of harm. 'Cause if they can tell you stories about what happens next door, don't you know that when you ask about the latest war,